Theater is this really insanely beautiful tool for changing the world. We can do something to make people feel something, identify something in themselves, right? That's what we do in theater. We hold a mirror up to nature and we reflect something back to people. It could be a funhouse mirror. We can do something satirical and make people see something a funny way. Or it could be just a really clear reflection of, let's take a look at our community. Let's take a look at our society. And when we hold up that mirror, it does make us look at ourselves in some kind of way and go, are we happy with what we see? Is there social change we need to create? And then that leads to those really important discussions that happen in the lobby, on the car ride home. And that's the impact that we make as theater artists.
It's the Civic Theater Show from Civic Theater of Greater Lafayette, Indiana. I'm Jono. Hark, forsooth, Benji Braswell doth proclaim, savor better Shakespeare's masterworks upon the stage than dissection within the schoolroom's confines. Why, thou ask? Because the bard's quill doth ink more than mere words. His plays be fraught with jest, sharp wit, biting sarcasm, and a trenchant eye for social commentary that doth far transcend the tome's dry pages. Yes, AI helped write that, and you will soon discover that neither a computer nor I can say as eloquently as Benji Braswell says that the truest essence of Shakespearean genius is lost betwixt our modern ears, because we are 4 centuries removed from the Old English of his day. And that is why, according to Benji, who is Civic Theater's Director of Education and Outreach, that Shakespeare is better experienced in theater than in English lit class. And whether it's social commentary through Macbeth or Beetlejuice, theater can be a conversation starter for adults, for teenagers, and kids. Working with young people, helping them discover themselves, and how to change the world through theater is Benji's mission. With experience teaching in the South, the Great Plains, and here in the Midwest, I asked Benji, in what ways are American kids in various parts of the country the same? In what ways are they different? Here's Benji Braswell.
I've taught all over the country, but I think that time is what's the most different. Like, time and technology has made the most difference in kids, as different than location-wise. You know what I mean? Kids need structure, and they're creative little balls of energy no matter where you go, and they want to express themselves and learn how to use their voices. And yes, they all have different upbringings, and maybe there's a little bit of different culture and different things that come into those upbringings from being Chicago or West Texas or East Texas or Colorado or Indiana. But the big difference that I've seen is 10 years ago, kids were dealing with a host of different struggles than they are today. And a lot of that has just been time and technology and the amount that we're on screens and where stuff is coming from now, you know?
Yeah, that's certainly a generational thing, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I was thinking back to when I grew up, we had television, we had radio, but we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones and tablets,
right,
and social media and all of those distractions. And today's kids, at least some kids, have those things in their pockets at earlier and earlier ages.
Yeah.
Okay, so with those cultural differences that might come from region, how did that affect you growing up? Where did you grow up? How do you think that your formative years inspired you to become both an educator and an actor?
Okay, so I'm from the middle of nowhere, West Texas. I'm from Odessa, Texas. You'll know it from George W. Bush is from Midland, Texas, like neighboring my city. It is a very conservative place. It is where my high school, Permian High School, is. The book Friday Night Lights was written about it, which turned into a movie and then a TV show. It's all about just football, and my dad still has season tickets to high school football games. I had nothing to do with high school football. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of town. And it's all oil field country. A lot of kids don't finish high school because you can drop out of high school and go make more in the oil field than you will
Sure.
ever make with a college degree in my town. And it's a real boom and bust kind of town. Like the boom happens and the town goes nuts, and it no one has a place to live anymore because there's so much building going on, and then a bust happens and the town gets deserted and there's a bunch of like half done stuff everywhere. And so in the middle of this crazy oil filled town, for no apparent reason that I could ever understand, there is a replica of the Globe Theatre that has officially been standing longer than the actual Globe Theatre in London now because it burned down and ours stayed. And so this globe called the Globe of the Great Southwest is truly like brick for brick a replica of the Globe Theatre, and has a little Anne Hathaway cottage out back and a little labyrinth. And it's gorgeous and beautiful and became my safe space. My dad is a minister and a home hospice chaplain, but always had a love for the stage. And so since I was 3 years old, I was on that stage with him while he was acting. My first role was the foundling child in Midsummer's, running around on the shoulders of Oberon while my dad was, I don't remember who he played in that. I first saw his head get chopped off as Macbeth when I was 5 years old. And
Wow.
yeah, so like I was raised in this theater on this stage. And then as far as education goes, my mom has been a teacher my entire life. So when I was in elementary school, she was a special education teacher. And then as I grew up, she went back to school and got her library science degree and then became a librarian. And so she's this really beautiful, elegant storyteller as well, and taught me a love of stories. We spent our time like going to neighboring towns and searching used bookshops, and getting all we could carry back home. So like the love of stories and sharing stories and bringing them to life and debating them and discussing them and digging through text is something my family holds really dear.
Hmm.
And so I think that's been instilled in me from an early age.
Both nature and nurture in your case.
Yes, very much so.
For those who aren't familiar with the Globe Theatre, of which your hometown's theater is a replica, you said, how big of a theater are we talking? What's the facility like? I mean, are we talking 100 seats? Are we talking 500 seats?
I think we're talking like 350.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Does it serve as a community theater? Is it just professional productions that tour?
So when I was there, it had been turned into a community theater. It had one way of paying its actors, which was the Shakespeare Festival. And so when we would have Shakespeare festivals, we could audition for them and then be a part of them, and then we'd get small stipends, and then that we could bring in outside directors and outside actors to come be a part of that Shakespeare Festival for as long as we could keep that running and as long as it would keep going. But throughout I support grants, you know the game because we
Yeah.
play it all the time. But throughout the year and the season, it operated as a community theater. And so it would do so many Shakespeare shows, but it would also incorporate other shows. And so throughout the year and throughout my entire elementary, junior high, and high school life, I was just in every show I could possibly be in and just lived at that theater.
Before you started telling us about the Globe Theater-like facility in your hometown, I was going to ask how big your high school was, and was it big enough to have a drama club, a drama class, or even its own stage? But it sounds like with the big theater that was there, maybe your high school didn't need its own facility.
410 seats. That's the Globe of the Great Southwest. My high school did have its own theater program, its own theater. There's actually a second community theater in Odessa. So like I said, boom and bust town. It's not like a tiny town. It's probably about the same as Lafayette
Okay.
in size, but it's just hard to manage the amount of people that are in it because it comes and goes,
Sure.
Yeah. And then the drama silos kind of stayed away from each other. If you were involved in one community theater, you weren't necessarily involved in the other. Sometimes you went from one to the other. And then high schools tended to do high school productions. And then if someone was involved in another, they couldn't do both at the same time because rehearsals were happening at the same time.
Sure.
The common all rehearsals conflict with each other.
But you had access to multiple stages.
Mm-hmm.
So I can definitely see how your upbringing, your dad being involved in theater, your mom a storyteller, led into what you were going to study. You earned a degree in theatrical directing at Columbia College Chicago, a master's in theater and performance studies at the University of Colorado. And am I correct that you directed nonprofit groups in both places?
Yeah. So in Chicago is where I got my start doing nonprofit work. I was looking for a way to start getting into doing something because I saw a need in just public education. Schools struggling on the south side of Chicago, and especially in elementary school, just kids not having access to any resources, especially after school when they didn't have anywhere to go. And so I found a company called Guide Right that was starting up that was offering like after school tutoring, and they needed help. And so I started doing some after school tutoring with them and talking about, okay, well, what if we developed other forms of programming, you know? And so they had me come in to make a drama program with them where I could go to schools and offer classes a couple of times a week to keep kids after school a couple of hours when they didn't have somewhere else to go so that we could start making plays and doing types of performances.
So now you are Director of Education and Outreach here at Civic Theater, another nonprofit. It seems to me that educating people about the arts has, over the past 11 years, been your personal mission. Is that right?
It's pretty true. I think that there's just something really magical about theater. I am a firm believer, and I've been fought on this a lot, but I'm a firm believer that theater is this like really insanely beautiful tool for changing the world. And it has a lot to do with catharsis and the fact that we can do something to make people feel something, identify something in themselves. But it really just comes back to everything comes back to Shakespeare for me. Like Shakespeare told us to hold a mirror up to nature, right? That's what we do in theater. We hold a mirror up to nature and we reflect something back to people. And the type of mirror that is, whatever lens that is kind of up to the director and up to the cast, right? It could be a funhouse mirror. We can do something satirical and make people see something a funny way. Or it could be just a really clear reflection of let's take a look at our community. Let's take a look at our society. And when we hold up that mirror, it does make us look at ourselves in some kind of way and go, are we happy with what we see? Is there social change we need to create? And then that leads to those really important discussions that happen in the lobby on the car ride home. And that's the impact that we make as theater artists, right? It's not necessarily what happens on the stage, it's what happens in the lobby and what happens on those car rides home that creates the real impact that we make. And I think that that's what I go for and why it's so important to me.
We hold a mirror up to nature. We hold a mirror up to our nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? When do you think that first occurred to you? How did it first occur to you that theater is a mirror for our society?
Oh, I think that I was really lucky to have the educators that I had at the Globe because I worked under Catherine Graybill and Anthony Ridley, which were these two fascinating directors from New York who lived in New York and were actively directing in New York and were just on tour and driving through Odessa when they stumbled upon the Globe. And they were like, why is this here? Why does this exist? And they couldn't leave it. And so they immediately like met with people and took it over and stayed there. They'd never been to Odessa, Texas before. They had no idea. And I'm so lucky that they did that because I don't think I'd be who I am if they wouldn't have. Right? A little kid from Texas, I never would have had contact with individuals like this. But they were not of my town. They were not, do you know what I mean? They were New York directors who had such insight and so much of this context of what theater is and what theater can do for people that from day one, I was an elementary school kid coming in and getting these intense table work lectures on Shakespeare and what happens when we take it out of time. We're not going to do it, period. We're going to put it here because this is what the world needs right now, because now it's going to make people think of something else. And so getting that so early in my life made me start analyzing text a different way.
They brought you a unique perspective.
Absolutely.
So, okay, you mentioned Shakespeare. Let's talk about that. Last season, Civic Youth Theater presented Macbeth, an adaptation of a Shakespearean classic. It featured a cast of 7 girls. Now, you, as you've mentioned, have had a lot of experience with Shakespeare. What made this adaptation, last season's Macbeth at Civic, what made it unique?
So This adaptation was by Erica Schmidt, and it's beautiful. If you didn't get to see it, or if you haven't read this adaptation, you just need to, because you don't have to be a Shakespeare fan to just geek out over how beautiful it is. It's these 7 teenage girls who sneak into a junkyard and take on all of these powerhouse male roles that they would never otherwise have the ability to play. And they get to simultaneously be these schoolgirls, but also be all of these different other roles in Shakespeare at the same time. And so it's a play within real life. And Erica Schmidt's adaptation is about taking these schoolgirls, purposefully giving them these power dynamics, and asking you as the audience member to look at it and see it through the lens of, like, what is American school violence doing to our children? And how does Macbeth, as a story about power and violence and cycles of violence, really make us take the context of our youth and gun violence specifically and rethink what we're doing to them? And through a really short, like, Macbeth can be long. She really, really, I'm going to say, profoundly whittles it down into like a 75 to 90-minute section of the script, and it's really, really beautiful, and leaves room for them to have these moments of, like, coming together and breathing and being soaked in rain, but then leaves room for violence and punk rock, and it's just fantastic.
How did you introduce these kids, these 7 young teenage actors, these girls, into many of them? Some of them I know had acted previously in Civic or maybe in their own schools. Some of them were new to Civic, as is always true. How did you introduce them to the world of Shakespeare, which can be a challenging thing as an actor and, frankly, as an audience member?
Sure.
Even if we know of its brilliance, it can still be challenging to understand it and take it in and absorb it and feel where the playwright was going with that. But how do you approach introducing material like that? Difficult enough, plus this context of being social commentary through this unique adaptation.
So the same way that I introduce Shakespeare to anybody, I always say that Shakespeare is meant to be seen, not to be read, right? And so I feel like Shakespeare gets a really bad rap because we teach it in English classes, and because we put this really lofty — you can't see what I'm doing with my hands, I'm sure, if you're on this podcast, but I've just got them like way over my head. This really lofty, this is too smart for you. This is academic, profound work that is beyond any of our understanding on Shakespeare. And that's just so silly, because Shakespeare wrote for the common man, right? Like, Shakespeare wrote for people who paid pennies to go see him. Shakespeare wrote a bunch of, it's all just, I'm the director of education, so I can't say these things, but, like, it's all just butt jokes and silly jokes. Do you know what I mean? And some of them are not nice. And so if you read Shakespeare as Shakespeare is read, like, word for word, he writes a lot of really just, it's a lot of sarcasm, and it's a lot of throwing insults, and it's a lot of just trying to make you laugh. There's a lot of really poignant social commentary in it that you can dig down and get to, but it's not written above anyone's head. It's just written in Old English, right?
Yeah.
And so all you have to do is make sure that people first get rid of that brick wall that's been put over them that says this is beyond you. Because once that brick wall's there, you're going to go, I can't. And once you say I can't, it's already there, right? And the beautiful thing about working with children is, once you tell them that they can, learning a new word, even if it's a word in Old English, is no different than learning a vocabulary word in school. So they ask when they don't know something, and then you tell them, and then all of a sudden they're using that word every single day and they're fine. as opposed to you try to teach an adult a new word and it's a whole different story, right? So they became detectives and got excited as we were going through doing table work and asked questions, and then we get to decode the script together, and that becomes an exciting part of the rehearsal process.
Oh, I love that. Decode the script together.
Yeah.
You mentioned a moment ago that we think of Shakespeare as this smarter than us material that's why it's challenging. But then I think, what a great juxtaposition to take that smarter than us, make those 7 teenage girls through their acting, through playing these roles in Macbeth, make them the smarter than us performers from whom all of us have to learn.
Right. Right.
That's like a juxtaposition of what we expect in society and something the theater is uniquely capable of doing.
Absolutely.
Most of the time, Civic stages a show for 1 or 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks if we're lucky, and then it's done. But this past summer, the American Association of Community Theater invited Civic to stage your show at their 2025 Youth Fest theater competition in Des Moines, Iowa. This was more than 2 months after the final performance of Civic's Macbeth here in Lafayette. Would you tell us how your cast and crew prepared for the competition? I'd just love to hear stories about the trip to Iowa.
Yeah, so this was so cool. We were so excited we got the opportunity to do this because we've never taken a youth show to competition before. AACT, this was their first youth fest. And so like they've done little like snippets of youth festy type things, but this was their first full-on youth fest. And we just had a cool enough show that they invited us to come. And so how do we prepare? First of all, I don't know if you've shut down a show and then revamped it before, but it's harder than it sounds because lines will go out of your head, right? So step
Sure.
one was for competition, we had to go blank stage to blank stage in 60 minutes. And earlier I told you this was a 75 to 90-minute script. So we had to make cuts, and then we had to make sure the actors had those cuts down. So not only did they have to remind themselves of these lines that they'd taken 2 months off of, but they also had to get their cuts memorized.
Sure, they have muscle memory still lingering from the 90-minute version.
Yes.
And yeah, now they have to, retrain their muscles, so to speak.
Right. And cutting Shakespeare it's not hard. We always cut Shakespeare, right? Very rarely are we doing 3-hour Shakespeare productions anymore. Most Shakespeare's cut down. But like I said, Erica Schmidt's version was already pretty beautifully cut into what it was. And so it was pretty hard to get it cut down to what it needed to be. And so we had to cut a lot of blocking. The kids had so much devised work done in the production that we had to really cut down on. And then we were traveling to Iowa, which meant all of our set had to be like packed up, put into traveling units and taken across, which was mostly our volunteers putting them in cars or in anything that didn't already have a student loaded into it and taken to Iowa with us. And so we had to kind of tone back on what we were taking set-wise. We had to decide, okay, here are the things that are really important and crucial to the script that we're going to take with us, which changed up a little bit of our blocking. That really beautiful moment in the rain that I love so much, we had to rethink. And then we had to really work our transitions to make sure that we could get on stage and off stage and cleaned up, because we write in chalk all over the stage. We throw leaves all over the stage. There's stage blood, and then there's water. And we had to get it all completely cleaned up and off stage in 60 minutes. It was a wild ride.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids had so much fun. So we got to do a road trip together, and they got to stop at like the world's biggest truck stop and go shopping and play and eat together. And then we got to stay in a hotel and have daily days at the conference where they got to go to all these amazing workshops on musical theater and puppetry and dramaturgy and directing. They each got an individual mentor to meet with at one point in the conference based on like what they wanted to do with their life in theater. And then every night we got to see all of these other youth shows that had come to the competition. And then at the end of every night, headed back to the hotel, we got to huddle together and talk through the shows together. It was this really just love fest of theater that happened, and getting to see these kids who really want to grow up and do more with their life in theater, getting to geek out and see all of the opportunities that were there and getting to see what other youth companies across the country are doing. It was really pretty magical.
Sounds like we don't know if any of these kids are going to go on into acting or theater and some kind of role in theater when they grow up. But at least for now, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And a way to show them how many opportunities are out there. I think that especially when you're a kid and you get excited about theater, all you think about is like, I'm going to be on stage and I'm going to act. And this was a really beautiful way to show them, like, look at all these avenues that are out there, because there was costuming and dramaturgy and puppetry and just them getting to see how many different aspects there are to it. And here's everything that you could do if you wanted to do something in your life when it comes to this.
You mentioned that this adaptation of Macbeth is a reflection of our society today, talking about issues that affect kids in schools and greater society at large, above and beyond social commentary via performance. Have you yourself come to think about issues in a new way as a result of Macbeth or of any performance that you've done? Or has anyone later told you that they changed their mind because of a show that you helped to put on a stage?
So this is a hard question because, yes, of course, I think I wish I had better answers than I had, but like this has happened to me so many times in my theater experiences. So as far as like changing your mind, I think I just don't know how deep you want me to go. So I dramaturged a production for the Colorado Shakespeare Festival when I was in Colorado of Troilus and Cressida, and we decided to put it in a post-apocalyptic world.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful production. And in this post-apocalyptic world of everyone at war, the director decided that we were going to take all of the generals and change the gender of the generals. So all of the generals were women. And it did this incredibly beautiful thing to the text, because when Cressida gets traded to the other side of the war, there's a moment where all of the generals who are men go and one by one grab Cressida and kiss her on the mouth. And it's always been this really gross moment of just like men doing this terrible sexual thing that men do.
Yeah.
Right? But all of a sudden, when it was a woman doing it, it was because these other men did it first and then this woman did it last. And it just became a power play. And it was a move to be like, I am the one in charge and I am the most powerful one here, so she will be next to me. And it was this moment that clicked for me about what a subtle change that changed so much in the perspective of this script, because that completely took away this aspect that was really gross in other productions and made us completely go to one side and think one thing about this entire army, to suddenly we're still understanding that it's about power, but it's something different now. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Another one that got me was I did a production called Quantified Self with my partner when I first met him in Colorado. I'm really into immersive theater. It's been what I wrote my master's thesis on and did a lot of research on. And so when I first met my partner, Will, we were working on a project called Quantified Self. And it was all about data collection and like how far will you go with your data to like gain access to things. And so we basically set up a house party that you had to give away data to gain entry to in order to scan in and play games and do things. But the whole test of it was kind of getting people to understand, like, what are you actually giving away when you sign those user agreements, right? It's pretty early on. Like looking back, it's pretty early on in this whole world. But I came on just to do character development and blocking, and really had no idea about what I was doing when I was signing those user agreements. And so it actually taught me a whole lot about that in the process of it. And then last but not least, just to take us back to Macbeth, When I was doing all of my research for my master's thesis, the show that I was really obsessed with was Sleep No More in New York, which is this grand immersive production of Macbeth done in a warehouse where you get to free roam around and watch with no words a really beautiful, elegant production of Macbeth done in a Hitchcock style, fantastical, devisey dance insanity. And when I finally got to go experience it, I was kind of shocked at how rough it was on its audience members. Like I got pulled and pushed around a lot by actors and like thrown to the ground at one point by an actor. And it made me go back and do a lot of writing in my own academic work about like the ethics of immersive theater and audience interaction, and just how do we make sure that we're ethical about the work that we're doing with our audience when it comes to immersive theater and taking care of our audience members and our actors, but in ensuring that we're not letting our actors go too far with our audience members.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's always things that inform that when we're going through shows. I don't know if I went too deep into that question for you, but
Not at
that's
all.
what it made me think of.
What it's all about is just getting you to think and then and share your story. Interactive theater sounds fascinating. Where can you take what
Talk
you've
about it
learned?
forever.
Well, where can you take what you've learned in your previous experiences in interactive theater, or how do you hope to take those previous experiences and bring them into civic theater?
Oh, I have so many ideas. I don't want to spoil things, but I have so many ideas. So we've done a little bit with camps and stuff. We did a detective camp where the whole goal was to have students go ahead and design their own interactive, semi-immersive. I try to hold back on the term immersive some, but semi-immersive audience interactive detective mysteries. And so day one of that camp was we staged a detective mystery for the students. And so I put it in different locations and we hid clues everywhere. And detective mystery being like a semi scavenger hunt, the camp counselors all had characters and we were playing along with them and kind of like wove them into our own identities. But I had a kid who was an actor who didn't like the script that was written for them, and so they had like the script had gone missing. And then we had a ghost in the theater that was like playing pranks. And so after the students had all gotten there, the light shut off in the theater, and I had already given them detective kits, which included black lights. And so they shone their black lights around, and then they found things that had been written on the stage and invisible ink. And that led us to the next thing. And then, so they went down to the dressing rooms, and then there was stuff on the dressing room, And so throughout all of that, they solved the mystery. And that was the first day of camp. And then from then on, they separated into groups and then designed their own detective mysteries that they wanted to take their friends and families on. And so we staged theirs at the end of camp for friends and family to come do. So that's like baby steps into it. But I've got plans for other things that I'd love to do at Civic that are more immersive, that are more interactive, because that's really where I feel like not all theater has to be, but where I feel like at least younger audiences would really love to go. We're a very we want to be involved kind of generation. And I know that my students are a very be involved kind of generation. And the role of passive audience members sitting in a dark room and watching something tends to not resonate with them as well, which is why they keep reaching for something else in the middle of shows.
Sure,
and so
they reach for their phone or their tablet or,
Yeah, so if you give them a way to be involved and have an active role in it in some way, it really engages them in the story. They just want to have a voice, And so finding a way to give them a voice, it challenges us as the artists, but it also gives us a way to evolve our process and allow them to have a little agency in the process as well.
And what a great way to empower these young actors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next with that.
Yeah.
That'll be something we can talk about, I'm sure, later on.
For sure.
Okay, let's go down a different road entirely and talk about the next Civic Youth Theater show that's coming in October 2025, Beetlejuice Jr. It's a comedy and a musical. Can you tell us about it?
Beetlejuice. I'm so excited about Beetlejuice Jr. I think I told Raquel that we had to grab the rights like the day it came out because I was so stoked and we were so worried that everyone was going to try to grab them and we wouldn't get them. So Beetlejuice is a cult classic. It originates from the 1988 Tim Burton movie, which I'm hoping everyone has seen. And if you haven't, then you need to go watch it.
Oh, then just press pause.
Yeah.
Go get it.
Go watch the
watch
movie.
it. It's a brilliant movie.
And then come back to us. It's a dark comedy for sure. And it's an amazing dark comedy because those are the best kind. And it's about a girl named Lydia who's lost her mom. And it really does follow Lydia through, you'll read this in my director's note, through like the 5 stages of her grief. Like truly, her 5 stages of grief are clear in this play. She attempts suicide and doesn't do it because she ultimately meets this demon and these 2 ghosts haunting her house and realizes that maybe she can use them to get her mom back and also play some tricks on her dad, who's making her mad at the moment because he's moving on a little too quickly from her mom's death. And when she finds Beetlejuice, he definitely just wants someone to say his name 3 times and bring him back to life. And so between Lydia trying desperately to do whatever it takes to get her mom back and Beetlejuice trying to do whatever it takes to get his life back, we get this pretty wild adventure through a Burton-esque haunted house and the underworld. We definitely go to the underworld for a little bit. And it ends up with some pretty honest, real world reflections about grief and loss and what it takes to get through that.
Those can be heavy subjects, especially, well, heavy subjects for any audience, but heavy subjects especially for a young cast. So how are they dealing with it?
They adore this show. They absolutely adore this show. I think that students are so much more willing to talk through heavy topics than we give them credit for a lot. I actually say this to parents and to teachers a lot as a theater teacher. Like I think adults are usually the ones who are a little more hesitant to talk about the deep things than the kids are. Kids are so curious and they want to know more. And so I think that's often why they hear the dark stuff and then they're like, ha, and they grab onto it. Beetlejuice is also just fun and quirky and weird. And so it's one that goes out to the weirdos. And so I think that's part of why they gravitate towards it so much. But the deeper subject matter is also something that for our teenage students who I think see a lot of the struggle that Lydia goes through are really diving into the process of how she overcomes it. And she overcomes it through continuing the fight and really pushing herself to dive into something uncomfortable. And I think that's where they're finding their strength is this like, okay, you push past the uncomfortable to get to something that ultimately leads to happiness. And that push through the uncomfortable for Lydia, even though it's going to the underworld at one point, ultimately is accepting the fact that her found family is what she needs, right?
Mm-hmm. We talked with John Collier in a recent episode about his process as a director for casting a show. I want to ask you the same question. Could you share something about your process for casting a show and how do you think that might differ when you're as the youth theater director when you're casting kids?
It's hard. That's my process. It is hard. We had over 60 kids come out for Beetlejuice and I had to keep it to like a cast of 25, which is near impossible because I don't know if you've met the kids in this town, but we've got some insanely talented kids.
Yes, we do.
And so I would have taken all of them happily. And I think I tried at one point to just be like, we'll just have a cast of 60. That's fine. But I don't think they would have all fit in the theater. It's hard. And I think it's so much harder. I would be so cutthroat if I was casting adults. I think I'd be so much easier to cast adults. Our casting process is for a musical, it's you got to show us all 3, right? You got to show us the dance, got to show us the song, and then show me a little bit of acting through reading a scene or a side, as we call them in auditions. And then from there, it's really sculpting out, okay, so like let's see if we can weed it down to who killed it on all 3. you know?
Yeah.
And then from there, you pull out those dreaded audition sheets and you look at the conflicts, because conflicts come way more into play than you think they do, especially when it comes to kiddos. Because while we've also got insanely talented kiddos are also insanely busy.
Yes.
And I know that because I also have a crazy schedule. So I if you're insanely talented and you were the best dancer, the best singer, and the best actor in the room, but you can't be at any of the tech rehearsals or any of the performances, then you can't be in the show.
Yeah. That's
And
gotta
that's
be
hard.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. And so unfortunately we get a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the next step, is we look at the conflicts and then we have to weed it down from there, you know. It's That's my process, is you collect the data at the auditions and then you go from there.
Yeah. You said that theater can be magic. So what's magical about this production of Beetlejuice Jr.?
I think, oh gosh, we're not in this space yet. And so I think I'll have even more to tell you when we get in this space. Can I tell you what I think is going to be magical?
Yeah.
Okay.
And by not in the space, what you mean is you're not in our theater. You're rehearsing elsewhere.
Right.
You're waiting for the current production to finish up before you can move into the theater.
Right. Because when I do a musical, my process is very different than when I'm doing a stage play. So like when we were doing Macbeth, I got to dive into the script with the kids and I was very hands-on with the text, right? And we started by doing, like, our rehearsals were half table work and then half getting up on our feet and doing devised work together. Musicals are totally different. So for musicals, the kids start with learning the music, and then we move on to a little bit of choreo, and then we go back to the music, and then we learn a little bit more choreo. And now we are officially, they know all the music, they know all the choreo, and we're smacking them together, right? And so we're going to drill that until we get to the space. And then once we're on their set, we can fill in the blocking that goes in the in-between. That blocking that goes in the in-between is where my magic starts happening. Is because that's when I get to really start playing with all of the surprises that I have for the kids, because I have hopes of shadow puppetry, and there's not a single moment that those kids aren't going to be moving on stage. It's a very ensemble heavy show. And so the magic that I want to create is through a lot of black light and a lot of shadow techniques and some devised work that I haven't gotten to play with yet, and that I think the kids aren't even aware is going to happen yet, because right now they just know the choreo and the music and they haven't gotten to play with those in-between moments yet.
Oh, wow. So this is going to be as exciting, it sounds like, for the kids to get into the space. They're going to be learning new things. They will have been with it for weeks already, but then they get to come into our theater and start learning their blocking, and you're going to throw all these new things at them, which is going to get them freshly excited and motivated.
Yep.
Sounds like it'll be really fun for the audience too.
I sure hope so. That is the goal.
So you've been... Oh, I want to take just a quick step backwards and ask you to help me with the Theater 101 moment.
Yeah.
Not only for me, but for our listeners. You mentioned earlier the term dramaturg.
Yeah.
You use it as a verb, actually. But what is a dramaturg? What does it mean to be a dramaturg?
And this is a good question, because I feel like it comes up a lot. So there's actually, like, if you go to an undergraduate program, your first class of, if you take dramaturgy, your first semester would be defining the term dramaturg, truly. So I'm going to give you like an easy definition, but know that there's so much more to it than that. A dramaturg is the ultimate know-it-all on the script. They're the person who knows everything there is to know. They should be able to define any term that you need. They should know everything there is to know about the playwright. They should be able to provide you with any resources that you need as an actor, as a director, as a costumer, whoever needs anything when it comes to the time period that you're in, or when it comes to the playwright's intention. Their goal is to uphold the integrity of the playwright at all costs. And so they really come in handy, I think, for all scripts in general, but especially with new work. It's really good to have a dramaturg, because they become like a really good advocate for not only the playwright, but for the director in the space that is working with the new work. So sometimes it's not awesome to have like your playwright and your director in the same room when something's being created, right? Like let the playwright write the work and then let it go be put on its feet.
Yeah, let someone interpret it in their own way.
The dramaturg's a good person to have in that room, so that they can go, here's what the director's doing. Great. hear things that they found, and then go back to the playwright and go, here are some of the words that are not reading that way. How do you feel about this?
Okay.
And so your dramaturg becomes that advocate for the playwright in the room, but also the advocate for the work. Does that make sense? Kind of
Yeah.
that bridge.
I like that. We're going to have to do this more often.
Yeah,
I want to do this as we go forward. Theater 101 moments.
I love it.
Not only for me, but for our
For
listening
everybody.
audience. So you, Benji, have been gracious to share a lot of your personal story, what inspired you to do theater and to get into teaching. And I hope to ask you back to talk about that other part of your role in civic theater, community outreach. But why don't we wrap with this today? This is going to be a broad question, I guess. Why do you like working with kids so much? And in your experience, why does theater end up meaning so much to the kids who get involved?
Okay, so I think this probably is going to be my biggest question, because this is going to be my up on my soapbox moment. Theater is empathy training. It is truly empathy training. And that's why it's so important for students, and why it's so important I think it's so important for everyone, but we literally get a chance to step inside someone else's shoes. It's not a figurative thing. We're literally stepping into someone else's shoes. We're becoming a character. We're trying to understand how they feel. That's an experience that's incredibly important, especially in a day and age when, at least in my eyes, I feel like empathy is kind of going by the wayside. Like we don't really think about empathy as much, especially in online variations where we don't necessarily have to present as ourselves always, or have a face beyond what we're saying.
Yeah.
And so empathy training becomes more and more important. Theater helps build social skills that have kind of been forgotten in our society just naturally. And so I think that it's incredibly important for children in general, just because it's a pretty valuable resource in this moment in time. But when I say that I believe theater is our most powerful tool to change the world, I truly believe that. But I think it might be even more powerful through the art of making it and creating it and doing it and practicing it and rehearsing it, and have even more of an impact on the people who do it than the people who see it. And I think you'll see that as you talk to people. Like the people who are doing theater are so transformed by it. And the students who do theater are so transformed by it. You'll see it. Like you'll see a student who is so shy or so unsure of who they are or of what they want. And then the more that they practice stepping into different characters, they identify like, I liked this, I didn't like that, I was unsure about this, I didn't know I could do that. And then they start picking up these things, and all of a sudden they're realizing who they are through the experimentation of this play that they've gotten to do in this safe structure, in this safe constructed space where they knew that they could play. And that's what theater is at its core. It's play, right? And we build that for children, like a safe constructed place to do social play and interaction where they can do empathy training. And that seems like an over thought out response, but I really do think that it's so integral to kids getting to figure out who they are, and to do it in a safe space where they know that there's not judgment, where they know that they can let it go. Like I can play a character and then I can let it go, and then I can play a different one and I can let it go, and I can identify, like, I played that villain and I realized I don't want to be anything like that person. So I'm going to take those parts of my personality and I'm going to check those things off. Like I'm going to stay away from people that do this or this, and I'm never going to act like this because I tried it and I didn't like it. Those are really valuable lessons to kids. And being able to act it out puts it in our muscle memory so that we remember it, in ways that I don't think you can do in other forums.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Empathy training. How different and better could the world be today if more people could learn that skill set when they're 8, 10, 12, 14?
Absolutely.
Instead of the way that most of us learn it when we're 50, if we're lucky.
Well, and usually through something bad happening, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Benji Braswell, Director of Education and Outreach at Civic Theater. We talked about how our Macbeth production played at the 2025 American Association of Community Theater Youth Fest Theater Competition in Iowa. It won the following awards: Outstanding Achievement in Ensemble Work, the Backstage Award for Organized Setup, Transitions, and Load-in, Load-out of Set Pieces, Props, and Costumes, and Ash Durham and Quinn Findlay won Achievement in Acting Awards for their roles as Macbeth and Witch Number 2, respectively. Congratulations all. The next production by the award-winning Civic Youth Theater is Beetlejuice Jr., with 4 performances in 3 days, October 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2025. Tickets are available at LafayetteCivic.org. In the next episode of the Civic Theater Show, the cast of Beetlejuice Jr. Music for the podcast is licensed by Audio. That's AUDIIO.com. I'm John O. Thanks for listening. The Civic Theater Show is presented by Civic Theater of Greater Lafayette, Indiana. See yourself here.